So, we are going to plot now for the case of f equal to q times x. I have already given you the expressions. This is x between 0 and 1. So, this value is q by 6. As far as the finite element solution is concerned, that is going to be linear by definition. So, that is the u h particular. But if I look at the exact solution, this time it is going to be cubic and it would look something like this. So, this is u exact particular, and again I have the solution is exact at x equal to 0 and 1. Well, of course, 1 is not a surprise because that is a boundary condition, but this one certainly q by 6 which is equal to d1, that is a little bit surprising that even one element or one degree of freedom gives us the exact answer. How about the slopes? So, we again plot the slopes. So, this is 0, 1. The slope for the exact solution is now a quadratic function. So, let me sketch that for you. So, it would look something like this. So, this value is minus q by 2, and at a value of 1 over root 3, this is 1, this value turns out to be minus q by 6. If you remember, because we have taken a linear finite element space, n1 and n2 both are linear, so the slope is going to be constant in each element, and that value turns out to be minus q by 6. So, this is the value that would be generated for u h particular comma x, and that is exactly minus q by 6. This value is u exact and the particular solution comma x. So, the slope is exact at one point, and that one point is x equal to 1 over square root of 3. Alright, so we have done a constant q and we have done a linear q, and in both cases we have seen that the solution is exact at the nodes. So, let me summarize this. So, summary for n equal to 1. So, the first thing is that the homogeneous solution is exact. Okay, so that's a surprise, but then if you think about it, as I said, because the exact solution is linear and we are using a linear finite element space, so that works out very nicely. How about the non-zero f? So, for non-zero f, I get uh to be exact at x equal to 0 and 1. That means at the two nodes. And as far as the slope is concerned, so there is one point where comma x is actually equal to u exact comma x. Okay. And we saw that it was midpoint in one case, and in the other case it was a point which is not the midpoint. In fact, the value is 1 by square root over 3. We now move on to a slightly more rich space. So, let us consider n equal to 2. So, I am now willing to have 2 elements, or in that matter I am willing to have 2 unknowns, d1 and d2. So, for n equal to 2, my WH of x is given as C1 n1 of x plus C2 n2 of x, whereas my UH is given as D1 n1x plus D2 n2x plus G times n3x. This time you will recall that n1 of x and n2 of x are the bases which have to satisfy the condition that W should be 0 at x equal to 1. So, this must satisfy that n1 1 equal to n2 1, they should be 0, and n3 at x equal to 1 should be exactly 1, so that my function can satisfy the boundary condition. As you will appreciate, if I put x equal to 1, these two would vanish by this design, n1 and n2 are 0, and if n3 becomes 1, then I have satisfaction of the boundary condition. So, here is the proposal that let me draw the functions for you. So, there is the x axis from 0 to 1, and I want to draw n1, n2 and n3. So, let me also draw x equal to half. So, this is 0, 1, 0, 1, this is a half. So, this time I am going to use n1 as this function. This value is 1. So, it is linear from 0 to half, and then it becomes 0 in the remaining domain. Similarly, I want to propose that, so this is n1. n2 I want to propose that it takes a value 1 at x equal to half, and it is 0 at the other two nodes, and n3 takes a value 1 here by definition, and it is 0 at the other two nodes. So, it takes a form like this. Okay. Such a description, as you can see, is piecewise linear functions. So, there are two intervals, 0 to half and half to 1. In each of these intervals the functions are linear, they are continuous. So, at each point the left hand limit and the right hand limit, they match. So, they are also square integrable. So, they belong to the L2 space. Now, if I try to take the derivatives, so perhaps I should draw the derivatives as well. So, let us do that. This is the x axis. And I am going to again draw this is 0, half and 1. What about the derivative for n1? So, I am interested in plotting n1 comma x, n2 comma x, n3 comma x. As you will appreciate that it goes from a value of 1 to 0 in a x length of half. So, the slope is minus 2. So, let me plot this. This is the slope minus 2, and the slope is actually 0 for this half. So that's the n1 comma x curve. If I look at n2, then n2 comma x is a plus 2 for half of the domain. So this is the value plus 2, and then in the other half it is a minus 2, it decreases. So I get this kind of a behavior. I can now plot n3 comma x. So this is 0 in the first half, and over here it is a plus 2. So I can write this as plus 2. So that's the kind of situation we have. Now what you will notice is that the function n1, n2 and n3 are continuous, so they are definitely C0. But when I take their derivatives, there is a discontinuity at x equal to half. So they cannot be called C1, so they are C0 functions. I can calculate the area under the curve for the function, so it is square integrable. Likewise, even though the derivative is not continuous, but I can still calculate the area under the curve of n2 comma x whole square dx. So therefore these derivatives are also square integrable. Okay. So therefore these functions n1, n2 and n3, they belong to the class C0, and of course also to the class H1. Okay. Let us write them down explicitly. So the proposal is that n1x is given as 1 minus 2x for x between 0 and a half, and it is 0 for x greater than half but less than equal to 1. Similarly, I can write down n2x, and I can write down n3x. So let me give these values to you. This is 2x, this is twice of 1 minus x for x between 0 and half, and this is between half and 1. This one is 0, 2x minus 1, x less than half, and x greater than half equal to 1. With these values of n's, let us try to plot what could be the prospective WH and UH. So let me draw some candidates for WH and probably some more for UH. So I am going to put these values of 0, half and 1 on the x axis, and likewise 0, half and 1 on the x axis. WH, as you will appreciate, is C1 n1 times C2 n2. Okay, so a linear combination of just these two functions. Now the value, as you can see, of WH, so notice what is WH is C1 n1 plus C2 n2. If I want to estimate WH at x equal to 0, then it is C1 times 1 plus C2 times 0, because n2 is 0. Okay. So this is simply C1. Similarly, you can check that WH at x equal to 1, sorry, at x equal to half at this point would be C1 times a 0. So if I look at n1, n1 is actually 0 at this node, but n2 is 1 at this node. So you can work this out, this would turn out to be simply C2. And WH at x equal to 1 by definition is 0, it has to vanish. UH is given as D1 N1 plus D2 N2 plus G times N3. And you can again check that UH at x equal to 0 would give you simply D1, because N1 is 1 and both N2 and N3 are 0 at x equal to 1. Similarly, UH at half is simply D2 and UH at 1 is simply G. So, let us plot WH and UH using these values. So, I have these two constants C1 and C2. Let me choose them. So, let us say I choose this value of C1 and I choose this value of C2, then what we are talking about is C1 is the value here, C2 is the value here, and 0 is the value here. So, the graph would look something like this: a linear distribution between these two values, between C1 and C2, between 0 and half, and another linear between half and 1. Okay, so, piecewise linear functions. I can do the same thing for UH. So, let us say this is D1, maybe I can plot just to be different D2 as negative, and then this is, let us say, G3, which is the value G. So, between 0 and half the value varies linearly for UH between D1 and D2. So, I would get this graph, and then between half and 1 it goes from D2 to G. So, I would get this value. Okay. I can also plot the derivatives. So, let me show you what the derivatives would look like. So, if this is my x and I want to plot UH comma x, so this is 0, this is a half, and this is a 1. In each of these two elements, so I am calling this as element 1, this as element 2. Okay. So, maybe I write down here there are two elements. The first one is from 0 to half, and the second element is from half to 1. Okay. So, if I look at UH comma x, because this is linear, so my derivative is a constant, and the way I have drawn it, it is a negative value. So, I would get a negative slope here. This one is a positive slope, so perhaps I should draw a positive value. So, that is your UH comma x. Okay. So, you would generate a discontinuity in the slope at x equal to half, and one can do the same thing for WH comma x. Okay. In fact, it is possible for me to calculate these values. So, this value would be given as, let us do that, this would be D2 minus D1 divided by a half. Okay. So, twice of D2 minus D1, and this value here would be twice of G minus D2. So, notice the discontinuity in the derivative. Okay. All right, we will set up the matrix equation system. So, n is 2. So, if I look at KD equal to F for n equal to 2, my K matrix, so n is 2, my K matrix would look something like this: K11, K12, K21, K22, and my F vector would actually look like this: F1, F2, and likewise the displacement vector would be D1 and D2. I need to form the K and F and then estimate what is d. So, if you recall, KAB is given as integral over the domain 0 to 1 NA comma x and B comma x dx. What I will now do is I will split this integral into two parts from 0 to a half NA comma x plus the remaining integral from half to 1, the same thing, NA comma x. So, let us calculate K11. So, K11 is simply n1 comma x whole squared, and I just have to take these two parts. If you notice from here, your n1 comma x, okay, n1 comma x actually has a value only between 0 and half, and it is 0 in the second element. Okay. So, let us evaluate this. K11 is 0 to half n1 comma x times n1 comma x dx plus a 0, I would put it for the second part. And this value, as you know, is minus 2, this value is also minus 2. So, the answer that you would get would be simply a minus 2 or a plus 2, sorry. Likewise, you can evaluate other members of K. So, you can evaluate K21 and K22. You can already see that K is symmetric. So, KAB is same as KBA. So, actually these two values are identical. So, you need to evaluate only one of them, the other is automatic. So, I will skip the details, you can do this yourself, and you should be able to see that the K matrix is going to be given as twice of 1 minus 1 minus 1 2. Let us now go to FA. So, each member of the force vector, I am referring to that as FA, is given as three parts. The first is from the forcing term NA comma F, then I have to evaluate NA at 0 times H, and finally the term. So, let me expand this. So, this was supposed to be A of NA comma N3 times G. This was n plus 1. So, I have substituted n equal to 2, and so you get N3. Let us evaluate this term. You will notice that as far as N3 is concerned, this is N3. N3 comma x is 0 in the first half of the element. It is non-zero only between half and 1. So, I do not need to evaluate the integral in which N3 comma x is involved in the first half of the element. So, therefore, this term I can write as simply integral half to 1 n a comma x and 3 comma x dx times a g. I will skip the details, but I will give you the answer for f. F will turn out to be this vector. So, f1 is 0 to half 1 minus 2x f of x dx plus h, and f2 is given as twice of integral 0 to half x f of x dx plus twice of integral half to 1 minus x f of x dx plus 2g. So, now we know k, we know f, and D can simply be computed as K inverse F. So let's again do the cases that we had done before. Case 1 is when F is 0. The homogeneous problem. So we want to get the homogeneous solution. In that case, F simply reduces to, I have H here and a 2G here. And I can solve for D as K inverse F. K inverse you can estimate, it is simply the inverse of this matrix, so that would be half. And then you hit it with F, which is H times 2G, and this will turn out to be G plus H and G plus H by 2. So UH, the solution is essentially D1 times N1, that means the first row times N1, and D2 times N2, which is the second row. So I'll just expand it. This is G plus H times N1 plus G plus H by 2 times N2. And of course, there is a term G times N3 which comes from the boundary conditions. Okay. So I should be able to now estimate this and compare it to the exact solution. Let's do that.